Three, two, one. Amelie! Let's see. Hi. That's a cold start for me. So can you hear me all right? Okay, excellent. So I just arrived, so I have no idea what we've done before. And I hope you had a great day, but from the energy I can see it was amazing so far. And so amazing. Just to double check, is there anything happening afterwards, or is it food and drink?
Drinks.
Got it. Okay. Robert, we heard you. So it's an absolute pleasure to be here, and I am super delighted to speak in front of so many brilliant people, and I'm very curious about the conversations we're going to have later on. But before we start, I tell you why I'm here. So I was approached by Christina on LinkedIn, and she asked me to speak here, and we talked about it in a briefing, like what should I talk about, and like, is there any benefit of me being here? And we decided I will tell you about my story and what I learned. So just a couple of things I learned because I learned a lot, and who I actually am. So today it's gonna be a journey to the stars. And along this journey, I've learned a lot about resilience and patience, and I'm just going to share it with you. So my name is Amelie Schönewald. I'm a German citizen, European at heart, and I was selected as a reserve astronaut by the European Space Agency in 2022. I'll tell you all about it, but we're going to start at the beginning, and I hope this thing works. Let's see. Okay, it doesn't work. Wait a minute. Okay. I'm pretty sure almost everyone here knows Simon Sinek. Can you just raise your hands if you don't know him? So everybody knows Simon. Okay. So in case you were too shy to raise your hands, even though you don't know him, just look him up because there's a lot of wisdom that he shares and a lot of organizations the private sector actually follow. Crazy. And one of the things that I really liked in preparation of this talk here is his theory of the infinite game. And I'm gonna come back with, did we touch on that today? No, but I haven't. Okay. So the infinite game, just as a short definition. Usually in business, and I am in business, I'll tell you more about that as well. We talk about winning, beating competition, and so forth. But after all, you can only win something when there's an end. And business, just like life usually, and the learning process along it, there's no end to it, it just continues. Like a series on Netflix. It just keeps going. And I really like this because in the end you cannot be perfect because there is no end, and there's also no perfect in my opinion. But for me, also my goal is to just learn along the way, to grow and become better than I was yesterday. So along these lines, we start talking about yesterday. So these are my origins here. You can see me and my great-grandmother, her being on the left. She was an amazing person. She survived 2 world wars. She was born in 1903 and she actually lived to 100 years and 3 months. A very, very strong and resilient person. But what I took away from it mostly is this love for being outdoors and the love for nature. Because she had 2 dogs, 2 German shepherds, and a gigantic garden just right by the river. And every summer we would go there and just chase butterflies, collect insects, feed chickens, and climb trees. And with that, I learned from a very, very young age on that I just love exploring, and I love learning, and I love to be a part of the universe, with Earth being at the center for our human perception. And this curiosity actually followed me all the way to school and beyond. And I brought you this picture here. I didn't take it, but I found it online. This is a picture of a starry night in 1997. So I was about 7 years old back then. And this night, my mom woke me up in the middle of the night to show me my first ever live comet in the sky. And if you can see, just in the middle here, there's a comet called Hale-Bopp. And this comet here even strengthened my curiosity to go for science. And I really wanted to become a scientist and explore the universe, understand things, and understand the very basics of being and existence. And with this, at the young age of 7 years, I started reading a lot of books. And after a lot of books on astronomy, I continued with biology and found this fella here, Charles Darwin. And because of that, that's a lot. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the finches here. So you know about the evolutionary theory, right? And Charles Darwin traveled the world and ended up on the Galapagos Islands. And maybe some of you have been there, maybe? No? Yes. Okay. So this was actually a trip that I gifted to myself after I finished university. So I went to the Galapagos Islands just because I loved it so much when I was younger. He found it, laid out the groundwork for the evolutionary theory, looking at different finch populations on different islands of the Galapagos. And as you can see here, they're all finches, Fink in German, but they look differently. So one of them has like a huge, strong beak, perfect to break kernels and seeds. And on the bottom right, you can see a very, very tiny one that's very easy to use when you are looking and poking for insects. So these finches developed differently on different islands just because there was different food resources available. Just like us humans sometimes. But nevertheless, all of this made me realize that I really want to become a scientist. So I started studying at university. I started with molecular biotechnology, went on with biochemistry, and in the end I did biotechnological engineering. So I just covered everything I found really, really interesting. And it made me stay in academia for about 12 years. It's a very, very long time to realize that in the end I went in the private sector. However, for my PhD, I went abroad. I went to the very exotic land of Austria. Keep in mind, I'm from Bavaria, so it wasn't that far. But I went to Austria, and even though I'm German, I went to Austria, and you have to get your permit to actually work there. So I went to this office, trying to get my license, and while waiting there, it was, for me, the first real turning point in my life. Because I was reading the news and just scrolling, thinking if there's anything new I can read about, and I found an advertisement. So for those of you who can't see the screen, they were looking for the first female German astronaut. Because guess what? Back then, we didn't have a single German woman in space, but 12 men. So, in the space industry, which was very far away from me at that point, there was people who were not happy with the situation. And one lady in particular, she found it so distracting that she founded an initiative and started collecting money to make the first female German go to space. And I found the advertisement where you could apply for it. So this was me, not hesitating a single second to apply. And I'll tell you a bit about the process here. This was an initiative that was private. But of course, she didn't have to start from scratch because there have been astronaut selections before. She collected ideas and the process information in her network and made like a copycat of the actual European Space Agency and NASA selection process. But you can see here, there are 6 different steps. It's like a funnel, because it's also quite cost intense if you want to select 4 people who are being sent off to space. So the first step, they check your application criteria. So did you do the right things in order to be available? So what that means is, do you have a master's degree in one of the sciences that is needed to become an astronaut? So it could be medicine, engineering, any of the life sciences, or you're a doctor. or a pilot. So that's the criteria. Then there's also the age. You should be below the young age of 50 years to apply. That's no excuses, guys. So apart from all these the criteria to even apply, there's other steps involved. So the second step is cognitive tests, psychological tests. You do a lot of questions and answers. You have to prove that you're mathematically and physically sane, and you know how to solve problems, and you are available to spend 10 hours straight working at a computer without giving up. They ask about geometry and spatial awareness and all these kind of things, and it's very intense. And actually this step is the hardest one, because this is where they select out the most people. Then the third stage, you have something like an assessment center. Now it's the first time that they assess your team behaviors. Are you a leader? Are you a follower? Are you capable of doing both, depending on the situation? How stress resistant are you? And it keeps going. Medical selection. And the last two stages, there's very few people left. This is a very intense panel interview with the highest people in the space sector, or in this case, in the initiative. So this is what I was signing up for. I applied, and I made it to the first stage, the second stage, and the third stage. And after the third stage, they had a first press conference because they wanted to raise awareness, and they wanted to tell the world that there's something going wrong regarding diversity in the space sector in Germany. And we were invited to Berlin, and we took the first ever official press photographs, at least for me. You can see me here. A couple of years ago, I still had long hair, and I was super proud with my fake astronaut helmet. And right after this tremendously insane event, we got an email whether we would make it in the next stage or not. And in my email it said, "Dear Annelie, we're sorry to inform you that you didn't make it to the next stage." Well, it was a short ride. And at this point, there was only 30 people left, including me, and they selected 8 out of these 30, and I didn't make the cut. Do you have any idea how that makes you feel? So I was 26 at that point, and maybe not as mature as I am today. And the way I handled it was, I don't think it was the best way. So I just thought, okay, that's it. I don't want to become an astronaut anymore. Just erase everything of the space sector out of my life. Pretty easy because I was doing my PhD and I was very busy. But I didn't handle it properly because I could have asked myself, why? I could have asked them, why? So I can improve what I did wrong or couldn't do at the moment. But I didn't do that. I just disregarded everything and went straight back to work. However, I realized just working in the laboratory all day just didn't satisfy me. So I started engaging in strange hobbies on my weekends, and I started doing expeditions in the jungle. I started being a member of the Austrian Caving Association, so crawling into caves on the weekend. And I also started my diving instructor license, only to realize that in the end, it was not about all these extreme hobbies. It was rather about being a member of a team that does crazy things together. So for example, like in the jungle, you can do it by yourself, but it's so much easier if you have a group that supports you and lifts you up. For the caving exploration, for example, we went on a 5-day trip, so 4 nights in a cave, just to support 2 divers who wanted to go and explore a new part of the cave. But the team was 12 people, so we had to carry all the heavy equipment. And when it comes to diving, in case there's any scuba divers among you, it's a body sport. So here we go. I realized a lot of things about myself and things that drive me, things that keep me engaged, things that are my ambition, things that are not my ambition. And guess what? I got a second chance. So a couple of years later, not just a private initiative, but the official European Space Agency had a new call for astronauts. The first time after 13 years. So it's like a once-in-a-lifetime experience. And I was there. I was done. I had my master's. I have industry experience. I was old enough. And I knew the process. So it's the same process. And the same stages. And I knew exactly. I got kicked out after stage 3. My goal at this point was not to get to the end, but my goal was to be better than I was the first time. To prove myself that I matured, to prove myself that I learned. So I applied. Do you have any idea how many people have applied at that point? 2,000? Any other guesses? I'm just saying this is for all Europeans, men and women, who are part of a member state of the European Space Agency, which is 23 states. So over 20,000 people applied. It's a lot of competition. However, it didn't feel like a competition, because these people, they are all distinguished specialists in their own very area. And they're really, really nice people, I learned. So at not a single point in this process it felt like a competition. It rather felt like a gift that I was allowed to spend time with them. And to cut the long story short, in the end, from these 23,500 people, they selected 17. So 17 Europeans who are part of the new astronaut class in 2022. And if you look closely, tiny one in the back, that's me. And 5 of us have been selected to become career astronauts. That means they're full-time employed by the European Space Agency, and they have missions that will be assigned to them. So the first one, actually on the very left, the lady at the front, Sophia Renaud, she's French, and she has a mission assigned to her leaving next year. So she's training really hard. And for the other of the career astronauts, there's also missions coming up, like one by one. So now the thing is, in Europe, we don't have so much financial power to support 17 astronauts just by now. But a lot of things are changing. If you look at SpaceX, the commercialization of space, all these startups that are evolving, not only in Germany, but across the entire world, basically. So there's things moving, and the European Space Agency wanted to be prepared. So they selected more astronauts than they could support missions, because they wanted to be ready just in case something pops up in the future. Or just in case special nations, like in my case, for example, Germany, wants to assign extra budget to enable a mission to support the scientific research in the country or the companies. So there's many, many options coming up. And just let me check if I did include a picture. No, I did not. But on the very right, there's a Swedish colleague of mine, Marcus Wandt. He was selected as a reserve astronaut. Actually, he was the first one of all of them who flew to space. That was last year. And the next one, Swabosz from Poland. Is there any Polish people here? Yes. So your colleague from Poland, Swabosz, he's right now in quarantine waiting for his space flight. So it's absolutely amazing. He's going to go to the space station for about 2 or 3 weeks. So things are happening. And I'm very optimistic that maybe one day I'll also get a chance. So becoming an astronaut is like a really cool thing. But in my case, being a reserve astronaut, my daily life doesn't look like this. I actually have a full-time job. I'm employed in the private industry. I work in a pharmaceutical company. I'm a project manager. And what we do on the side is every single year we get a 2-month sabbatical and we get to train in the European Astronaut Center. and we get a glimpse of what it's like to be a real career astronaut full time. So now I get a lot of chances to do outreach, to speak to kids, to change the public perception of science and space, and also commercialization. I'm trying to get politics and companies closer together to shape the future of what it's like to be a human, and trying to erase borders, bring people together. And even for me personally, I got a lot of humbling experiences. So for example, I was invited to the United Nations General Assembly to speak there for gender equality. And this is just one of the many, many examples of that. I'm going to skip over the next one. Go over here. So I don't want to talk about politics because that's so far out of my circle of competence. But speaking of these circles here, many, many times, especially in my position, where I have these different hats and different personas that I have to portray and that I actually am, like being the authentic me, just has different faces. And it feels very, very hard sometimes to get everything right, to be perfect in everything I do. And most of the time I just feel like I'm doing the thing up there, just running in circles without any improvement. And I'm not really noticing if there's any improvement. But after all, I think that's a very human thing for all of us. And every single step we take, every time we put effort into something, try to learn and grow, we just get a little bit better every day. We just have to, or I at least have to remind myself to check every now and then if I actually make progress. Because most of the time I have, and I just need to acknowledge it. So coming back to the very beginning, Simon Sinek, and also the spiral I just showed you. There is no end. It's just continuous, and there's no winning for me. It's just about becoming better every single day. And if you want to take part in this infinite game, there's a couple of rules that help you not suffer from desperation, but actually succeed and be happy with what you're doing without giving up. And from these tools, I just brought you, that's not science-based, that's just my personal opinion of what works best for me, so take it or leave it. But what works really well for me is that I set a goal, because once I have a goal, I know where I have to run towards. I have a goal and I know which steps I can take to get there. If I don't set a goal for myself, I just do a lot without actually being efficient. And the second point here is super important for me because sometimes I realize the goals that I set for myself are unrealistic or just not the right goals for me. And I have to recalibrate and make room for that. For the introspection part, I told you a lot about that. I'm not going to go into detail. I think we can talk about it later if you have any questions here. But the third one is also very important for me. So if there's a long, long way ahead of you, a long journey for a very high achieving goal, it can't always go right. And what works for me is to just stop and accept rainy and bad days. Just accept that some days are just, shit. And usually a day later or just a week later, things just look very differently. And the fourth one, this is coming back to what I said in the beginning, that I really love nature. It's a big point for me to set my goals, run there, be super focused. But the focus sometimes turns into obsession. And it's super important to take that side step and realize that whatever you're working on that's not really working out is maybe not as big of a problem as you think it is. And for me, the most important and easiest way to realize that is just to step outside and realize I'm just a little tiny cog in a huge clockwork. And there's so many other more important things to do. And I'm going to close with a couple of pictures here because I really love how they portray this noise inside someone's head sometimes. Like this sometimes feels like you're in a jungle and you don't even see the horizon. You don't know which direction to go to. because every single direction looks the same. There's trees and leaves and dirt all over the place. But if you work strong enough and you realize, okay, I want to go in that direction, at some point you hit a gap in the tree line and you see that faraway mountain top, the summit, your goal where you want to go. And once you reach that point, it's so much easier to run faster. And probably it's always like this when I start a new project. In the beginning, it's chaotic. But once I set this goal and I see it and I know which steps it takes, or which direction to go, it gets easier. And then comes the hard work to actually walk up that summit. But once you're there, you have a moment to breathe. You have a moment to be proud of yourself and let that resilience that you needed earlier recharge and pick the next summit you want to climb. And I hope some of these things that I talked about today resonated with you. And I think this resilience that I showed you today is one of the things we really need in our society and for the future workforce, but also resilience. The second bit is that we want to set goals for ourselves and then actually put in the hard work to get there. And maybe one day, with these 3 tools in my pocket, I actually make it to go to space. But now, I'll take your questions, and I'm very happy to talk to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Inspiration. Thank you for coming along today. Like you, when I was younger, I wanted to be an astronaut. I did actually do my astrophysics degree, and I was going to go to NASA to become a mission specialist because my master's degree is in drugs research and molecular biology too. And actually, when you were 26 and you were mentioning you had to leave your initial attempt to become an astronaut, I was working at the NASA base in Italy, in Turin, outside of Caltech, and my colleague, who's an astronaut trainer, we were working to design training to improve performance for the astronauts using AI and biometrics. And I asked her, how did you get to be an astronaut trainer? And she told me, well, I was doing HR, and I was asked to do some learning and development and astronauts, and now I'm an astronaut trainer. And the things that we tested, including helping astronauts to improve their performance using biometrics, and they were focused on making sure the astronaut was in the right emotional state for the task they were doing. Because if they were relaxed and they should have been more alert, or vice versa, then that task might not go right. Looking at the journey that you did, where you were at the beginning and where you were at the end, what thing that you weren't great at the beginning did you get really good at towards the end?
Could you just repeat the last sentence?
What did you get the most transformation in your journey? If you look back at the beginning where you were not great at something, and at the end where you were so much better, as you were saying, you wanted to focus on becoming better, what do you think you saw the most improvement and transformation in?
This is very hard to say because I never got this outside perspective on how I performed the first time. But from my perspective, what I think improved is that I started understanding myself better. That I had all these conversations with myself, not literally, but what do I really want? What's important to me? What are my strengths? Like the classics, which I didn't spend a lot of time on in the beginning. So I was just super busy doing things. But actually during the selection process, which by the way took 1.5 years, all these 6 steps, you have a lot of time to reflect. Because as you might know, that's what they check for. Are you really sure what you're getting yourself into? Like, are you aware of what that means? And all this introspection made me realize a lot of things about myself. And being capable of communicating that introspection, that's something that I definitely learned.
Just have a very quick question. I think you're very entrepreneurial story in such a personal way. What if you never get to go? How will that affect you?
Excellent question. And that's one that I actually ask myself many times as well. Because actually, they asked me as well in the selection process. They really wanted to know how it makes us feel. Because right now, in my position as a researcher, we're even more exposed to the public than the actual career astronauts because of busy training. They don't even have time to do interviews. So now we are in a position where we're just basically on our own, representing space, science, and everything that touches upon it without any support system behind us. And it's also in my free time, so I do it because I really want to do it. And if I wasn't so sure I can handle never going to space, I would never do it. And actually right now I assume I don't go. I can just hope for it. But even being here, being invited to events like this one, speaking in front of the United Nations Assembly, like all these opportunities I get, the learnings I get, the network I have right now, it's just so priceless. And even that is worth it. And if I get to go, that's a cherry on top. But final sentence here, being an astronaut, it's usually, and I even have the same picture, it's about going to space. But it's a whole life, a whole career. And being in space, that's just half a year. Maybe if you're lucky, you got 2 missions or 3 missions, it's maximum 1.5 years in space. What about the other 40 years? Like, there's so many other things that are part of being an astronaut. And if you're okay with that, and I am, it's totally worth it.
I will be loud thinking with you as the question formulates itself. You shared with us the importance of setting goals, but as I listened to your story, I find that there was a sense of not the direct goal of becoming an astronaut, but being open to possibilities. And when you saw that chance, you applied for it, you went for it. So I see it as an auspicious coincidence. But you correct me and reflect with me, please. So how can we make a mathematics out of it? So do we have like a horizon of things that we'd like to do, and we are in the places, or you were subscribed to that newsletter or something, that you made the chances more possible for you to be in higher places than you could formulate yourself as a goal? So that's probably the first question. The second question is, I see the strength of daring. That's my formulation. When you applied for it, there was a slight chance, but you went for it. And there was like, once it didn't happen, but you still went for it the second time. Now that you have, for me, proved to be a person that has the ability to dare to go for things that are bigger than your maybe imagination. Who are you now as this person who can achieve so many things, having a life of maybe like a more, it's a judgmental word, but standardized life, where you have a corporate work, you're doing, of course, important work, but still you have achieved something so special. How are you becoming the person that you are, who is capable of doing this? How does it reflect to your life? I see 2 big questions, but please reflect on the way you want.
Okay. Before I answer, I just want to thank you for the question so far, because I actually love them. Usually I just get the questions like, why do you want to become an astronaut? So I'm like, thank you. So where do I start? So possibly the second one first. So how the becoming part, the daring. I think I'm still becoming. I'm still evolving, and I think that's part of what I showed earlier. The infinite game. There's no I'm that person now. It's a continuous process. I learn a lot every single day, and just every interaction with people, like even your question now, just makes me realize, like, okay, wow, I need to think about that. And I need to admit that it's sometimes, this position right now, it is hard, because I run around with different hats and different objectives and expectations, like things that are expected from me. So at work, I'm just like, I'm a project manager. I'm like, let's say, a no one. And I like it because it keeps me humble and down to earth. Not that I have a problem with that, but it's super, super nice to have that. And on the other hand, all these other things that I get to do are amazing, but also very broad. So I think having the different hats, it might be challenging, but it helps me reflect on a daily basis, thinking like, okay, what change do I really want to make in the world, and do I really need to make a change? So it's really nice to have both of these things in my life. And let's see, maybe in 5 years' time I have a better answer. I don't know. And for the first question, very good analysis. Yes, it's not like I've ever had this one goal. I really want to become an astronaut, and that's all I strive for. It's rather, as you said, there's this horizon of opportunities, and I do have goals, but only rarely I really want to get there. So I want to go to the Galapagos Islands. Maybe one day when I have enough money. I want to finish my master's. Yeah, okay, that's a long journey. It's very easy to follow the process. But like, there's so many things that I really want to do, and depending on what's the opportunity at the moment, I take that step first. So if I wanted to become an astronaut in a moment where there's no selection process, like, there's no point. But as you said, I'm open for opportunities and this so-called priming. Like when you talk about red cars, there's red cars all over the place, right? So I take these faraway goals in my head and think about them, and just, if I have an opportunity, I go for it, yeah. But sometimes, like I had this crazy idea, I wanted to climb a very high mountain, and I got a trip, and then it was up to me to take the steps beforehand, so I'm ready. Like I started running, I started climbing other mountains, I started pushing my technical skills. So that's a very different kind of thing. But like there's different kind of goals. Yes.
Yeah, I'm curious because first we talked about the eye the whole day of our own profession, and you have a totally other profession as astronaut, at least 2 months a year. What did change AI in the training, and would it stay same?
So I have no comparison because I'm a bit at one training. However, AI, what first popped up in my head is something absolutely cool. So we had one part where we did a VR lab experience where they actually had 2 scenarios built up for us. So one scenario is where they reconstructed virtually the entire ISS, the International Space Station, and you could basically pretend you're already in the space station by moving around. And the physics engine was just absolutely intense. So even if you were there on the ground, you could pretend that you're pushing yourself in microgravity, and the whole thing was behaving that way. And the first time I realized like how crazy it is that we move in 3 dimensions, just like underwater, but even crazier. So AI was helping a lot there. And the second scenario they had is they made a VR experience on the surface of the moon. And you could pretend like you're hopping there with the gravity. And that's something that I think could definitely elevate the astronaut training experience, because you get a feel of what it might be like for things that you cannot simulate or emulate on Earth. And you're also curious about the pharmaceutical background because AI can do a lot there.
Yeah, there, coming. Susan or you? I have a mic. I have 2 actually, right here. Thank you. Susan.
Hey, thank you so much for sharing this story. I'm kind of curious about fears, the role of fear in what sort of fears did you have to overcome to kind of get to where you are today? When things didn't work out the first time around, and it sounds like you embarked on different adventures, let's say, in different ways, and kind of, with things work out in the way you hoped for this time around. I'm kind of curious, what kind of fears did you have to work through, and what helped in that process?
I'm having a hard time answering the question about fears, because I don't feel like at any step in this process I was fearful.
Mm-hmm.
So, from one perspective, this whole process and the application process, becoming an astronaut, this dream, it's not like I really needed that, and there was fear I wouldn't achieve it. Because, as I said earlier, it's a cherry on top. Like nobody can ever plan to be selected for something so unusual. So this is like a very nice plus, like a benefit on top of a nice life that I already enjoy. So I wouldn't talk about peace here. However, right now, I can see a lot of pressure building up for things that I didn't anticipate. So, for example, a lot of my flown astronaut colleagues said, there's so much pressure that you prepare for years that you finally go to space, and then you're there, and the whole world watches you doing a manual task, and you're so scared and afraid that you mess it up because it's expensive, and there's only one shot. And this is not one person telling me this. It's actually a lot of people, or not a lot of astronauts, who say like, okay, like this is my only goal, is operating this experiment successfully, and they put a lot of pressure on themselves. So maybe this is some aspect of fear that I didn't anticipate that's absolutely real. And I can already feel it now during the training and even outside. Like when I'm asked questions about satellites and telecommunications, and I'm absolutely not an expert, but I expect myself to know. And there's just this pressure that you put yourself in. And you want to be good because I feel like I'm a role model in this role. Happy? Everybody's hungry?
No, it's just very fascinating to hear you talk so humbly, because the whole way that you're presenting this is like you've achieved this already by being selected and going through the process. And at the same time, you're speaking here in front of everyone in such a humble and humane way. I think it's very inspiring. To me, it is. I wonder, in the moments where you feel particularly challenged, like what you just described, right, that there's a lot of pressure. How do you prepare yourself, or how do you talk to yourself when you have an critic or a challenge inside your mind?
Trying to be careful not to overshare. But honestly, like this week has been extremely challenging for me. So, like if I'm in a position like this, like also speaking about resilience, like this week and last week I had a couple of moments where I just thought to my work computer, just go away. But I felt like I have this accountability for things, and I'm accountable for myself, but also for the commitments I gave to other people. And if that means extra hours, I'll do it, because it's not hours that count, it's the result in the end. And if that means like there's some higher purpose, I'm speaking like a German set here, but if there's a higher purpose that I'm really committed to and that I believe in, like it's worth the suffering momentarily. And also in this position outside of my work laptop, like if I think being an astronaut is not always fun. Like you get poked by scientists and medics, and they want to take like muscle samples, and it hurts and stuff. You get so many explanations. It's crazy. But I know it's for science. And like if I was selected to be that human, or part of the panel of humans who get examined so we can improve medicine for humankind, or vaccines, or whatever it is in the end, like it's worth it. And it's just like a little step that's maybe uncomfortable, but the greater good in the end. It's definitely worth it.
Zooming out and zooming back in.
Yes, and that's also my point number 4, the grounding. Like there's something bigger than me. I'm just part of it, and I try to do my part.
Thank you.